Now, Syria's new leaders are taking over a nation and an economy in ruins. Just to give you some sense of perspective, before the civil war, the Syrian pound was worth around £50 to the US dollar. Now it's worth around 15,000. The head of Syria's largest business lobby says the new government will promote a free market. That's according to Reuters. But of course, first on the agenda, restoring stability and order. Niamh McBurney is Associate Director for the Middle East and North Africa at the consulting firm Control Risks. Niamh, good to have you on the show with us. Let's talk about the very short term, because there's the politics and then there's some degree of economics. On the political side, one would imagine the new Prime Minister has to make outreach to the regional governments. I assume the ambassadors are the first port of call. On the economy, it's money flowing to maintain public order to local authorities. Do we have any sense of whether both of those two things are taking place at this moment?
Absolutely, we do. And thank you very much for having me. So on the political front, there has been both domestic and foreign outreach by Hayat Tahrir al-Sham and its officials. On the domestic front, they've been working with some of the local groups across areas of the country in the western half of it that they're looking to bring on side. They also have their own governing body called the Syrian Salvation Government, which as of today is one half of the transitional body that will be ruling the country, in addition to the support that will be offered, or that already has been offered, by members of the former government. And then on the international front, there has been outreach to a couple of governments in the Gulf. They have also met with ambassadors from the Arab world and also Italy, interestingly enough. So they're getting down to work really on some of the details there.
Yeah, important details initially. I was in Doha at the weekend, and one of the things that was being discussed, at least in monetary terms, was which currency would be used. We'd obviously had reports of looting at the central bank. If we assume that the Syrian pound is maintained, which of course is what we're hearing, does the infrastructure still exist to provide that immediate financing to the local authorities? Because the public order element of this and continuing monetary flow to those areas is critical in these early stages. And again, does that infrastructure exist, and is that still flowing?
Yes, that's absolutely right. So some additional reporting from Reuters today, actually, in addition to the point you made earlier, was that the reserve in the central bank, gold and foreign currency, remained protected and have been preserved. So that's incredibly important and very positive. But what we're also going to need to see is formal adjustments to the currency regime that allow people to use foreign currency within the country. There was a very archaic, difficult system that highly restricted people's access to foreign currency, although that could cause some inflation. That is going to need to be normalized in the longer term. And there's also going to need to be international support as well, whether that's from regional partners such as Turkey or other Arab states, or more broadly, to also provide expertise as well as financial aid to help stabilize the economy and monetary policy over the next kind of 3 to 6 months.
Do you think Turkey is the initial provider of that foreign financing? They clearly have a vested interest. I believe they have the closest relationship with the HES at this point as well. And we have to remember that they're, at least internationally for now, recognised as a sort of terrorist organisation. So there's enormous sanctions that are placed still on Syria, which I assume further down the line, at least very quickly, will have to be eased on some level.
Yeah, so just on your first point there about Turkey, the group does have an affiliation with Turkey. There are relationships there, pre-existing relationships. And I mean, frankly, from an expertise point of view, Turkey is a country that has gone through an enormous amount of economic and monetary policy struggles over the last 5 years at least. They will have something to teach the transitional government about how to manage some of these inflationary pressures and currency issues. But when it comes to the situation more broadly, delisting the group, HDS and other affiliates from terrorism designations, removing sanctions, which of course have been in place on Syria for several decades, 2004, and actually arguably earlier, some from the EU, and then reintroducing the country into the SWIFT payment system. All of these things are going to be fundamental in helping its economic transition, but then the question is to whether Western states, who both are the main arbiters of these sanctions, whether it's the US, individual countries such as the UK, and then the European Union as a supranational body, the UN, actually have the political will and the desire to move forward and to really push through the reversal of these sanctions and terrorism designations. It's not clear that that's necessarily the case, which could slow the political and economic transition as well. So that's certainly something to watch.
I'm glad you mentioned the SWIFT payment system, because if they want to see some kind of formal rebuilding and investment in the country, then this is an essential step that we need to see taken. And critical to that decision will be the United States, the president-elect and the next government. What's your sense of what they're already saying, or perhaps not saying, about how they'll help to smooth this transition? Because so far from the president-elect, it's been about allowing the region to manage this situation, which has a very different feel than the current administration.
Yes, that's absolutely the case, and I think that the statements so far from the president-elect and his team have been, very interesting. That they do, at least initially, appear to want to take a step back to allow this to be a regional problem. Which, I mean, frankly, I think for a number of regional actors, they would quite like to be able to, support in the short term. But there will absolutely need to be broader international support, and the question is ultimately on whose terms is that? If the president-elect, once he becomes president, starts requiring changes of the transitional government, that may not suit a number of the actors within Syria, and not least other regional states as well. So there's a lot to, really to play for the future of the country, for the future of its economy, and we shall see how the next 6 months play out.
Yeah, certainly. Great to get your insights in the short term. We'll see how and what takes place in the coming days and weeks. Niamh McBurney, great to have you on. Thank you.